You know what's funny? The more you try to explain yourself, the guiltier you end up looking. It's like when someone says, "I'm not angry," but their voice is shaking. You can feel they're angry, even if they deny it. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that defending yourself is a trap. The moment you start explaining, you hand your enemy the power to define the rules of the conversation. They set the frame, and you're playing inside it. Once that happens, you've already lost. Think about this for a moment. You're at work, chatting with a colleague, and suddenly they drop a line that hits you like a punch. "I heard you messed up that project." Or maybe you're with friends and someone says, "You weren't really honest about what happened, were you?" Even at home, with family, it can happen. A sharp accusation, a doubtful tone. What's your first instinct? Almost everyone reacts the same way. You jump in to defend yourself. You explain. You give details. You bring out proof like evidence in a trial. You say things like, "That's not true. Here's what really happened." And in that moment, you feel like you're doing the right thing. You're standing up for yourself. You're setting the record straight. But here's the sneaky trap. The second you defend yourself, you quietly hand over the power. Without realizing it, you've put yourself below the other person. You've accepted that they have the authority to decide whether you're innocent or guilty. You've walked into their courtroom, and now they're wearing the judge's robe. And judges don't just decide based on facts. They decide based on feelings, impressions, and biases. Worse, they might not even tell you what they really think. Even if they nod and say, "Okay, I believe you," something dangerous has already happened. The accusation has been planted in their mind. Here's the brutal truth most people don't want to admit. The human brain loves drama more than it loves facts. We remember the story, not the explanation. When you defend yourself, you're repeating the accusation out loud. You're helping it echo in people's minds. And once that echo starts, it's almost impossible to silence. This is why defending yourself can actually do the opposite of what you want. Instead of clearing your name, you might be watering the seed of doubt, helping it grow into a tree that's harder to cut down later. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, and his solution wasn't to defend at all. But before we get to his rule, you need to understand why defending never truly works. Here's the thing about accusations. They're sticky. Once someone hears them, even for a split second, they linger in the back of the mind like a faint stain you can't quite wash out. Psychologists call this the continued influence effect. Even when people know something isn't true, part of them still remembers the rumor more than the correction. Think about it. You've probably experienced this yourself. You hear a story about someone, maybe a coworker stole credit for a project, or a friend cheated on their partner. Later, you find out it was all a misunderstanding. But somehow, the image of them doing that thing doesn't vanish completely. There's still that tiny voice saying, "But what if?" When you defend yourself, you're actually helping that voice grow louder. Why? Because now people don't just remember the accusation, they remember you responding to it. It turns into a full scene in their minds. The claim, your reaction, your explanation, and human nature being what it is. We often think, if they got so worked up, maybe there's some truth there. Machiavelli would say this is exactly why defending yourself is dangerous. It's not just about what's true. It's about what people perceive, and perception is everything in the game of power. Once the seed of doubt is planted, defending yourself is like watering it. Every word you say, every scrap of proof you offer is more sunlight and rain helping it grow. And even if people believe you on the surface, that seed has roots now. Roots that are hard to pull out. The harsh reality. Humans aren't purely logical. We're emotional, we're biased, and we love stories. Especially ones with a little scandal. The mind doesn't just file away a rumor as false and move on. It keeps it, tucks it away, and sometimes even reshapes it into something juicier. That's why Machiavelli's advice hits so hard. Stop defending, start controlling the frame. Because if you let your enemies choose the stage, the script, and the audience, you've already lost half the battle before you even speak. Machiavelli didn't care much for playing fair. He cared about winning. And in his eyes, defending yourself was rarely a winning move. His rule was brutally simple. Never defend, reframe. Reframing means you don't step into their arena. You don't let them decide the topic, the tone, or the timing. If someone attacks you, you either ignore it completely, making it look so beneath you that you won't even waste breath on it, or you flip it around so they're suddenly the one scrambling for answers. Here's why it works. In any conversation, the person asking the questions controls the direction. They're the driver. If you're answering questions, you're the passenger, going wherever they want. But if you turn the spotlight back on them, you flip the power dynamic instantly. Picture this. Someone says, "You lied about this deal." The average person's gut reaction is, "No, I didn't. Here's proof." But in Machiavellian terms, that's the trap. You just let them set the stage, and now you're playing defense. Instead, you could say, "Why are you so invested in this story?" Now you've switched the frame. You've made them the one explaining themselves. You've taken the steering wheel back. And sometimes, reframing is as simple as refusing to acknowledge the attack at all. Silence can be a weapon. Not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that unnerves. People expect resistance, anger, maybe even panic. When they get calm stillness instead, it throws them off balance. They start questioning themselves. Wait, did I just make a mistake? Did I overstep? Machiavelli's point was clear. When you defend, you hand your opponent the gavel. When you reframe, you take it away. And in the game of power, the one holding the gavel decides who stands accused and who walks free. Silence might seem like weakness, but in power games, it can be a deadly move. When you say nothing, you rob your opponent of oxygen. Arguments need fuel. Your words, your emotions, your justifications. Without them, the fire dies on its own. Think about the last time you expected someone to argue back, but they didn't. That pause, that void, it messes with your mind. You start replaying your own words. You begin wondering, did I say too much? Did I get it wrong? This is the magic of the silent strike. You make people fight themselves in their own head. Machiavelli understood that people are addicted to reactions. Your accusers want you rattled. They want to see fear in your eyes, hear desperation in your voice. If you give them nothing, no facial twitch, no raised tone, no defensive ramble, you strip them of their satisfaction. You also deny them new ammunition. Cesare Borgia, the ruthless leader Machiavelli admired, used this better than anyone. Once, a rival publicly accused him of breaking a promise. Everyone waited for Borgia to speak. He didn't. He just smiled, turned away, and went back to his plans. No press statement, no explanation, nothing. A week later, the same rival needed Borgia's help. He came crawling back, accusation forgotten. By staying silent, Borgia didn't just avoid looking guilty. He proved he didn't need the approval of his enemies. That's the ultimate show of power. Letting someone else's words vanish into thin air, unacknowledged, irrelevant. Of course, silence isn't easy. It feels unnatural when you're under attack. But that's what makes it so effective, because almost no one has the discipline to do it. When you master it, you stand out. And in the eyes of the crowd, the one who stays calm under fire looks stronger than the one who's shouting to be believed. Here's the cruel truth. The moment you defend yourself, you breathe life into the accusation. You take something that might have been a passing comment, overheard by a handful of people, and you amplify it. Suddenly, more people know about it. Even worse, they start to wonder if it's true, simply because you felt the need to respond. This is how gossip works. Imagine you hear that someone at work might have stolen something. You didn't see it happen, and you weren't even sure it was real. But then that person stands up at a meeting and says, "I didn't steal anything." Now, you can't stop thinking about it. The defense itself becomes suspicious. Machiavelli would say, never give the rumor oxygen. A lie dies when no one repeats it. But when you defend yourself, you repeat it, even if it's to deny it. In the court of public opinion, Denial often sounds like confirmation. People think, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. This is why the powerful don't scramble to explain themselves every time they're attacked. They understand the echo effect, that your defense will echo louder than the original accusation. Politicians, CEOs, and celebrities all know that sometimes the smartest move is to let the rumor fade into the background while they carry on as if nothing happened. Think about the internet. If someone tweets something nasty about you, replying just spreads it to more eyes. Ignoring it makes it disappear in the endless scroll. In real life, it's the same. Silence starves the fire. Words feed it. So next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, pause and ask, am I killing the rumor, or am I making it louder? Because once you understand this, you'll see that defending yourself isn't protection, it's promotion. Power isn't about fighting every war. It's about knowing which ones are worth your energy, and which ones are traps designed to pull you off course. When someone accuses you of something, it's tempting to see it as a challenge you must respond to. But Machiavelli would remind you, not every arrow is worth catching. Here's the thing. When you rush to defend yourself against every small jab, you waste time, you drain your focus, and you signal to others that you're easily provoked. People start to realize they can control you just by throwing accusations your way. That's not strength. That's being a puppet on someone else's strings. Instead, the wise and powerful choose their battles like a sniper chooses targets. Rarely, carefully, and only when it truly matters. Ask yourself, will this accusation still matter in a week, a month, a year? If the answer is no, it's probably not worth your breath. Cesare Borgia understood this perfectly. He knew that his enemies would constantly try to bait him into public disputes, hoping to drag him down to their level. But Borgia only struck back when the moment was right. When the move would advance his position, not just soothe his ego. Everything else? He let it roll off his back like rain. In the modern world, choosing your battles means resisting the urge to respond to every email, text, or comment that questions you. It means knowing that silence can speak louder than 1,000 justifications. When you do speak, it's not from a place of insecurity. It's a calculated strike that puts you back in control. Remember, power is a resource. Every time you defend yourself unnecessarily, you spend some of it. Save it for when it truly counts. And when you do respond, make it devastating, decisive, and unforgettable. In the end, it all comes down to one cold, sharp truth. The moment you defend yourself, you've already given away power. You've told the world, you have the right to judge me. And the second you hand over that authority, you're no longer in control of the game. Machiavelli's brutal law is simple but unforgiving. Never defend, reframe, or stay silent. If you defend, you're reacting. If you reframe, you're leading. If you stay silent, you're forcing the other side to fill the void with their own uncertainty. And in that silence, doubt grows, not about you, but about them. Think about every person you admire for their strength and influence. Political leaders, entrepreneurs, cultural icons. The ones who stay in control don't spend their days explaining themselves. They don't waste time proving they're innocent. They decide when to speak and when to let the storm pass. They understand that power comes from setting the terms of the conversation, not following someone else's script. In the workplace, this might mean ignoring a colleague's sly comment, and instead, steering the discussion back to the bigger picture. In your personal life, it might mean not responding to a relative's gossip and letting time prove them wrong. Online, it could mean resisting the urge to post a long explanation and instead focusing on actions that make the accusation irrelevant. The brutal part is that this requires patience. And patience is hard when your reputation feels under attack. But every time you resist the urge to defend, you're making a quiet investment in your long-term authority. You're showing the world that you're untouchable. So the next time someone throws an accusation your way, remember, if you explain, you lose. If you defend, you shrink. But if you reframe or stay silent, you keep the power where it belongs, In your hands. That's how you play the game Machiavelli mastered. That's how you win without even swinging a sword.